Hello, everyone. My name is Cole, and today we are streaming live from the Aquarium of the Pacific in Long Beach, California. Welcome to another episode of Aquarium Online Academy. So today we're going to be learning about a really cool animal home, also known as a habitat, called a coral reef. And we're going to learn a lot about the animal that makes it a coral reef and all the animals that live in a coral reef. But before we get started today, I also wanted to introduce one of my friends I have behind the camera, Lourdes. So Lourdes is going to make all this incredible movie magic happen behind me today as we learn about this coral reef habitat. My friends, so this is happening live today on December 11th, 2025 at 3 p.m. So if you're watching live right now, you actually have the opportunity to go ahead and text us on the line down below at 562-286-1838. Again, that is 562-286-1838. So, or you could actually email us at live@lbaop.org, and actually one of our coworkers will get back to you at another time. So even if you're not watching this live right now, you could actually still put in your questions and observations at another time. We'll try to get back to you on that. But again, I want to make sure that we have a really cool interactive program for you all today. So if you are watching live, maybe go ask a parent. They could help you to text down below at this line number right here. Okay, awesome. So I think we should go ahead and get started by warming up our scientist brains. Now, scientists like to do two things. The first thing that a scientist loves to do is they love to notice the world around them. So scientists love to make something called an observation. And that's kind of being able to sort out, I noticed that this squirrel has a red tail. What does that tell me about the squirrel? Or, I wonder why polar bears have such big claws. So it really helps us kind of understand the world around us, and we're going to use those skills today as scientists to be able to understand the of coral reefs. Okay, so I think we should go ahead and get started by warming up our scientist brains by looking at a really cool video. Oh, wow, look at everyone, this incredible Hollywood movie magic we got here. So we are now in a coral reef here at the Aquarium of the Pacific. As you can see, there's a whole bunch of really cool live corals throughout this video right here. So we want to use our scientist minds to be able to make some observations and ask some questions to be able to figure out a little bit more about this habitat or this animal home. So I'm going to go ahead and step off screen for just a moment, and I want you all to take a moment to make some observations. Again, you can go ahead and text our live question line at 562-286-1838 with those observations or some questions you may have. So when I'm trying to observe a habitat, some of the things I like to look at is like, are there different types of animals? I think I noticed that there's a couple different types of fishes here. I like to notice the different colors and shapes. I see like a lot of different types of colors here. It's a very beautiful habitat. There's a lot of stuff going on right here. What are some things that you notice, scientists? Do you have any questions? Okay. So, my friends, as I said, today we are exploring coral reefs. And we have a whole bunch of different types of coral right here. Do you see this right here? Do you see all the little tiny dots? Yeah, so each very single one of those dots is a little tiny animal called a coral or a coral polyp. And we're going to kind of explore that a bit more in a moment, but I kind of also wanted to explore what some of these other things are that are related to them, because there's going to be some things that we're going to know a bit better about. So, like if we wanted to explore about animals with bones, maybe we'd think about humans first, right? Because we know a lot about humans. So I think we should go ahead and jump over to some animals that we might know a little bit better. Why don't we go ahead and take a look at a sea jelly? Let's take a good look at a sea jelly and see if we can't notice anything. So, do you think that if I went boop, do you think it'd be a squishy or a hard thing? It'd be pretty squishy. If you've ever been here to the Aquarium Pacific, you might have touched a moon jelly. Here's one of the species of jellies that are safe to touch, but only here in an aquarium setting. Because unless you're a jelly expert, you should never touch a jelly if it washed up on the beach. Because you do not know what species it is, and you might not be good for you to touch, right? But I noticed that there are a couple little things on here. Do you notice these little semicircles? Yeah, so those are going to be its stomach. But, how is it going to get that food to its stomach? Maybe let's see if we can't take a look at a picture of a jelly with some tentacles on it. Let's see if we can find something like that. There we go. So we have one of our Pacific sea nettles right here. So do you see these long wispy things? Yeah, so those are tentacles. So a sea jelly has tentacles to kind of move around and sway back and forth and kind of bump into little tiny things called plankton that just float around in the water, right? And the more it sways, the better chance it has of bumping into something and kind of moving that up and in towards their mouth. So if you are watching right now, you could also do these jelly movements with me. There we go. You can kind of see those little orange tentacles in the middle, those called oral arms, and those oral arms are going to kind of help channel that into the mouths we were looking at earlier so that they're able to eat. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and compare this animal that I think we all know pretty well to another type of animal, a sea anemone. Okay, excellent. I'm going to step off screen here for just a moment so we get a bit of a better look. Does this animal look familiar at all? Do you see anything that's kind of like a jelly? Okay, let's do the boop test, everyone. Boop! It's pretty small, right? So, here at the Aquarium, we always like to do a soft and slow two-finger touch. We could also do a soft and slow two-finger touch. There we go. So, it's a pretty soft animal. It's going to have those same sort of tentacles that the jelly does. And the entire idea behind that is just going to try to latch onto stuff and again move it into its mouth. Maybe you've seen a sea anemone at a tide pool before. And it's kind of all wrapped up like this. Maybe we can find a photo of it wrapped up like that. And that's because the anemone's tentacles are not too long, right? Imagine if I had tentacles right here and I curled up to put some food in my mouth. That's what we're seeing when the anemone is all closed up. Let's see if we can't find that. And it's really important to see that just because, we want to see how these animals eat and how they function a little bit differently because they're all going to get food in a little bit of a... You may not actually think that animal is an anemone, right? If you see it all closed up. Okay, I think we got a photo here. Just a second. There we go. Ooh, that is an excellent video. Thank you so much, Lorda. So as we can see, it's kind of all closed up right now. It's going to be able to put that food into its mouth a bit easier. These animals might even eat something a bit bigger too, like a small piece of shrimp. And it's going to kind of hold on with those sticky tentacles so it can kind of put it into its stomach, right? Okay, now let's go ahead and go back to our coral home that we were in, that initial coral habitat. Which of these animals here do you think are related to a jelly? I wonder which ones. Do you think that this fish right here is related to a jelly? No, that's a fish. What about this? Whoa, whoa, again, I'm back. Okay, good. What about that up there? Do you think that is an anemone? Yeah, I think that might be a small anemone. Okay, now what about this? Do you even think that this is an animal? So, scientists, I want you to go ahead and think. Think hard with me. Do you think this right here is an animal, a rock, or a plant? Because it does look a little bit like a plant, right? Let's go ahead and think through this. Well, I see a lot of really beautiful colors. See a lot of repeating patterns. Do you see all the little tiny dots and how each of the little branches are the same? Yeah. So, my friends, that is a coral right there, and it is a type of animal. So, let's go ahead and see a close-up of a coral. There we go. Perfect. Do you all see these little polyps right here, everyone? So, these polyps look a little bit like the sea anemones we were looking at earlier, right? Yeah, so those sea anemones are pretty much just the coral. It just has little tiny versions of the sea anemone on top of hard rock. And that special rock is kind of like a skeleton, a coral skeleton. We'll explore that all just in a little bit. So I think let's go ahead and kind of look back on those animals because they're going to have a special name. So let's go over to my whiteboard. So check this out, friends. We have a couple different animals we just explored. So we have our jellies. They're going to have the bell, right? And then it's going to have some tentacles. Now, I'm going to go ahead and make an anemone. There we go. Got a nice little anemone right there. This could be a bit bigger, right? It's going to be maybe the size of a moon jelly, maybe a bit bigger. And then the last animal we kind of just started to look at was a coral. Now, all these corals come in different rocky shapes. I'm going to draw one kind of like a fan coral. So I'm going to put like a little tiny dot with a bunch of little tentacles. And as you can see, it's kind of just like there's a whole bunch of little tiny anemones on there. So all these animals together are part of a group called cnidarians. Can you say cnidarian? Cnidarian, good job. Let's go ahead and spell that out, friends. Cnidarian, C-N-I-D-A-R-I-A-N. Now, you kind of don't really say the C. It's cnidarian, not cnidarian. Cnidarian. So these are all animals that have stinging cells. Yeah, pretty cool. They all kind of are the one, like put together as a group due to that one thing. They all have those sticky little tentacles with little tiny stingers that allow them to be able to capture their food. And now, I often hear with cnidarians, like jellies, a lot of the time, like, oh, is it electric? So it's actually, their stinging cells are more like a harpoon. So imagine if you had a water balloon and there was a really sharp pencil inside that water balloon. You push that water balloon and then the pencil popped it and it shot forward and it holds on to something. So that is actually the stickiness you're feeling when you're touching a jelly or an anemone at an aquarium, right? Is it's more like it's just too tiny to break our skin. Can barely break through one layer of skin, and we got way too many layers of skin for it to go through it all, right? And that allows it to kind of hold on to things. But we're just too big. For us, it's like touching something like Velcro or something really small and pokey, right? So it's not good. It's gonna be okay to touch. Only with the ones we have here to touch at the aquarium, right? Want to make sure we're being safe and only touching animals in a setting like this, right? Okay, awesome. So I think that we should go ahead and look at some other biofacts. So a biofact is really just a cool animal thing. It can be a stuffed animal, a picture, or even a thing like a coral skeleton, which we're about to go explore right now. But it really helps us learn about the natural world around us. So let's go ahead and go back to that whiteboard. Okay, my friends. So I'm going to go ahead and put on a coral skeleton. Now, how does this look different than what we saw earlier? Is it colorful? Do you see any tentacles moving around? No, you could see some nice little holes there. Let's go ahead and zoom in maybe a bit closer. Can you see all of the little divots? The little half spears. So every single one of those used to have a coral on it, or in it, as I should say. So this would be what's known as a coral colony. So there's a whole bunch of coral polyps that live on this. So imagine if you had a whole bunch of anemones when they lived on there together. That's more or less what a coral is. So actually, my friends, if you could actually help me out with this, can you go ahead and count for me how many of these little coral polyps would have been on this one piece? Okay, let's try it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, I'm kidding, friends. We're not going to go all that way. That's way too many coral polyps to be able to count right now. So yeah, and how they do this is they actually have a special sort of thing that they secrete or kind of comes out of their body that will be actually kind of like something like almost like our bones. So as a group, they'll secrete this chemical. It's called a calcium bicarbonate, and it'll kind of settle into this rock form, and they'll all live inside of this together. They'll do it as a community. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to a picture of one of these things over here. So it's almost like a city. I personally live in an apartment. I live in one building with a whole bunch of people that live in it, right? So they're kind of all living in together as a community. Okay, so my thing is I'm wondering, what also makes coral special? Well, they have a really cool thing called a zooxanthellae. Can you say zooxanthellae with me? Zooxanthellae. There we go. And we can see how we can spell it right here. It's a pretty big word, so good job, friends. It's hard to say big science words sometimes. Okay, so a zooxanthellae is actually a type of algae that lives inside of the coral. Do you see all these little dots right here, friends? All those little dots are algae. So algae are a bit different than animals, and they're also a bit different than plants. They're plants. They're part of a different kingdom. But what's really cool about this thing, algae, is that it does actually photosynthesize like a plant. So a plant gets its energy from the sun and then also water and carbon, right? So that helps it produce oxygen and sugars. So what's really cool is that this animal will use all the waste carbon dioxide, which all animals put off, right, from the coral anemone the coral polyp, to be able to grow the algae, which in turn makes sugars for the coral polyp, which is kind of really cool. They kind of work together, right? And that's actually called symbiosis. So that's kind of both benefiting mutants. One party does something good, and it does good, and same with the other thing, right? Pretty cool, but there is a problem though. It's kind of a sad problem. So these zooxanthellae are really, really delicate. So they're really adapted to being in a warm water. If you notice all of the tropical fish we saw earlier, they're all used to warm water. So they're going to be kind of living in the center of our planet. I'm going to go ahead and jump over my whiteboard for just a second. Let's go back over to the whiteboard. Okay, so we have a nice, good planet Earth right here that we all love and want to protect. And then we have this big line going down the middle that is the equator right there. Probably like right up here in the United States, up in that area. That's where we are in Long Beach. There we go. So all these animals like to live closer to the middle where it's nice and warm. So, but the problem is, it's already warm. Our bodies are pretty warm too, right? If you go ahead and feel your forehead, it's going to be pretty warm, right? Our bodies run at about 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. But what happens when we get sick? When maybe we get a cold and we're laying in bed and we're like, oh, I'm so cold, but also so hot. My body just doesn't feel right. Well, that's called a fever, right? So when our body temperature goes up just like by 2 or 3 degrees, that's really bad for our body. And it's also the same thing with our oceans. Our oceans are getting warmer due to the changes in climate that we're experiencing in this time in human history, right? So because of that, the water is actually getting too warm for these corals that already do like warm water. Just that little difference is too much for these animals because they've been used to living this way for millions of years, right? And when that happens, the zooxanthellae, the little algae inside of those corals, unfortunately can no longer live. And when the polyps don't have the zooxanthellae to help make its sugars, it also cannot live either. And that results in something called coral bleaching. So let's take a look to see what coral bleaching looks like. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and step off screen, everyone, for a moment. So as you notice, the one on the left has this really, really beautiful red, orange, rust color. And you could probably imagine, like, that's a really good area for fish to live, little animals, all sorts of stuff. It's a really good home for this entire community. But when you see the right side over here, and you see all that white, it's no longer alive, right? There's not any more little coral polyps living on that coral skeleton. Okay. So, ooh, it looks like we have a question. So, my friend Timmy asks, how can we help the coral? That is a great question, Timmy. So, in general, we always just want to make sure we're protecting the ocean. The healthier the ocean is, the better off it will be for our coral. So that means just looking at what can we do on an individual level. So some things we can do on an individual level. We can clean up the ocean, make sure it's not polluted. If our ocean is polluted, meaning there's bad, junky stuff in there, right? It's going to be even harder when the warm water comes, right? We could also think about, how we interact with the world around us. Maybe we can take a ride with our friend to school instead of driving two cars. And that's actually going to help keep our planet a little bit cooler. And, it's a small little step. We can all do a small little step, and that helps, right? Okay. So, yes, I think we know a good bit about coral now. So I think we actually should start to explore some of the other animals that live in this really awesome habitat. So there's another word I kind of wanted to talk about really quick, and that is the word adaptation. So has anyone here ever heard the word adaptation before? Adaptation, there we go. We can see the word right there, adaptation. So an adaptation is like an animal superpower that allows an animal to live in its habitat or its home. So something that makes it really good at being there, right? And I think our first example of this, an octopus, is going to show us that really well. So let's go ahead and take a look at an octopus. So, think again more like about this habitat right here. It's all very bright and colorful. Do you think it'd be hard to hide if you were not bright and colorful? Yeah, I think that might be a little bit difficult. Okay, there we go. So we could see a picture of one of our tropical octopuses here at the aquarium. So you may notice it's kind of brownish color. Do you think that this animal has any special adaptations to be able to change that? I think we have some videos of our octopuses doing something pretty special. So let's go ahead and check that out. Okay, let's see. So we're going to be able to see it do something called camouflage. So octopuses have the really special ability to change their skin color using something called a chromatophore. Can you say chromatophore? Chromatophore. Good job. So a chromatophore is just a little tiny ink sac they have on the surface of their skin that their muscles are able to push. And that's going to allow them to be able to change how light bounces off of their skin. So let's see how it does that in action. Let's see. I think we have it just up in just a second now. There we go, everyone. I'm going to step off screen so we can see it nice and clearly. Whoa! Oh my goodness! That animal just went from red. Wow. I see some greens. I see some white. I see some dark brown. And it went back to red. Isn't that incredible? So as we can see, it's blending really well with its habitat. I think this is a great example of an adaptation, right? So I'd say, if another predator came by looking for a quick snack, I think it would kind of maybe miss it, right? It's blending in with all the colors really, really, really well. And do you think that this animal, because, there's a lot of nooks and crannies here on this coral reef, right? Do you think that this animal is going to kind of be able to squeeze in and move around, kind of find a nice little cozy spot? I know I love finding a cozy spot this time of year when it's nice and cold. I think so. So this animal is a special type of animal called an invertebrate. Good job. An invertebrate is an animal who has no bones. Let's go ahead and do a quick experiment. So everyone can go ahead, if you want to, you can stand up. You can touch your toes. And you're going to see, I'm going to feel my back like this. Don't stand up just yet, but feel your back all the way up and down. Do you feel those little tiny bumps? Yeah, those bumps are called vertebrae. And we are an animal called a vertebrate. So a vertebrate is an animal who has bones and those little tiny bumps on their spines, right? So an animal who has no bones and has no spine is an invertebrate. There we go. Perfect. So this animal has no bones. It doesn't really have very much structure. So because of that, it can be very flexible and move in and twist around its habitat, right? That's going to help it live in its home. Okay, awesome. So I think maybe we should check out another animal that's very important to this ecosystem. A parrotfish. Okay, everyone. So check this out, my friends. So I'll give you, think about the word parrotfish. What do you know? What do you know about parrots? What do parrots have that help them eat? Do you think this fish is related to a bird by any way? Maybe a really distant ancestor. So I don't think so, but it's going to have a trait that's going to be kind of special. Let's see if Lourdes can pull up a picture of what makes this animal so special. Look at that, my friends. Do you see those little tiny teeth right there? Right along in this area over here? Yeah, so those are its special beak-like beak-like teeth. And that's actually going to help them eat coral. Now, would you want to eat a piece of coral? Like I have this piece of coral right here. Do you think I'd want to eat a coral sandwich? No, my teeth would break, right? It'd be like a cartoon and go fall out of my mouth. No, thank you. I don't want to eat that. But this animal has very special teeth, as you can see right here. They're going to be able to break up coral. Now, do you think they're eating it for this part right here? No. They're going to be eating it to eat those polyps on top of the coral. And that's going to be their food. So to be able to do that, they're going to still have to be able to chew up that coral. Now, my friends, I have a very, very funny fact for you all. So if you've ever been to a place where there's like really warm water, you'll have to see really nice, beautiful beaches. They're very like white, beautiful, sandy beaches. Now, get this, my friends. All the white sandy beaches you've seen are parrotfish poop. So, got to eat the coral. They're not spitting it up, so it has to go somewhere, right? So after they've eaten all the polyps on the coral, they have to poop out that as sand, right? That's where you see all those beautiful white sand beaches. I think that's absolutely fascinating, right? Okay, so I think there's another type of animal that kind of feeds on coral. Let's see if we can't learn a little bit more about it. So it's going to be a bit different. It's not going to be a fish, and it's not going to be a coral. I don't know very many coral that eat other. It's going to be this right here. Okay, friends. So what do you think that is? It kind of almost looks like a coral, right? Do you see anything that reminds you of other animals? Do you see some arms? Does this remind you of a sea star by chance? That's right. So it is actually a type of sea star called a crown of thorns. So the crown of thorns is a really cool sea star because it has all these really cool spikes. And all those spikes have a little bit of venom on them so that when another animal tries to eat it, it is a good defense, right? It might be able to poison the animal that's going to be trying to eat it with its venom, right? But why I'm so interested in the crown of thorns is it's a sea star that you can find out near Australia, near the Great Barrier Reef. But it actually eats coral. So what it does is this is how all sea stars eat, my friends, is they'll actually throw up their entire stomach right onto their food, and they'll actually digest their food from outside of their body, and when they're done eating, they'll go and they will eat up their stomach. Pardon. Not exactly eat it up, but they'll slurp their stomach. Ooh. I think I got a little bit of crown of thorns in me. Just kidding, my friends. I'm okay. So they'll kind of slurp their stomach back up into them and digest further. So what these animals eat, they're trying to eat the little coral polyps, and they're a predator of coral. Now, the difference between this animal and the parrotfish, though, is the parrotfish has a lot of predators. You can kind of imagine a lot of animals might make a quick meal out of a parrotfish, right? Maybe like a shark, things like that. But the crown of thorns, only thing it eats are some fish, very specific fish that can get past those really good defensive thorns, or some certain invertebrates. So they don't have as many predators, right? And because of that, their populations kind of go too high sometimes. It's actually a problem in the Great Barrier Reef, the biggest reefs in the world, because there'll be too many of them and they'll start to destroy all the coral reefs, which are already kind of having a hard time due to the warm water. So there's a lot of people that are concerned that there maybe actually might be too many of these crown of thorns. And the people that take care of these habitats are trying to consider what they can do about that, right? So I think that's really interesting that there's so many different animals that kind of interact together in an ecosystem, right? Okay, friends, I think we should go ahead and head back to the studio because I think that's all we have time for today. Okay, this is the perfect place to end up right here. Okay, so I hope you all had a great time learning with me today. If you are here with a classroom today, if the teacher can go ahead and pop how many students you got into our chat, that'd be awesome because we're always trying to about here with the Aquarium of the Pacific. We learned corals, animals they're related to in the family of Cnidarian or of the group of Cnidarians. Things that corals have to deal with, right? Maybe too warm of water, but the really cool things that help them, like the zooxanthellae, right? And a couple different really cool animals that with them in their habitat. Alrighty, everyone. Well, I hope you all had a great time with me today on Aquarium Online Academy. I hope you come back next Tuesday to catch another episode or one of the many episodes recorded on our YouTube channel. I hope you all have a great day, everyone. Bye.